I'm Tracy Sable. Tonight on EWTN News Nightly, trip to Bahrain. The Holy Father wraps up his 4-day visit to the majority Muslim nation. We have a report from Rome. Balance of power. It is the final day before U.S. voters head to the polls. A preview of some of the neck-and-neck races. Proposal 3. Why pro-abortion groups are spending millions in the state of Michigan. And power plants, a free gift for some lucky people in Spain. These stories and more tonight.
From EWTN, the Global Catholic Network, this is EWTN News Nightly.
And thank you for being with us. Our top story tonight, Pope Francis is back in Rome following his 4-day trip to the majority Muslim nation of Bahrain. On his final day, the Holy Father invited Catholics, quote, to be bold in proclaiming the gospel.
Tutto sorga dalla grazia. Tutto è grazia.
At a gathering at a Catholic church in the Persian Gulf nation, the Holy Father encouraged the clergy to bring God's joy to the people there. The Pope also reminded attendees, quote, with God, we can face and overcome everything. On Saturday, the Holy Father celebrated Mass before 30,000 people. Joining us now from Rome is EWTN Vatican Producer Alexey Gotovskiy, who accompanied the Holy Father to Bahrain. Alexey, great to see you. Can you share with us some highlights of the Holy Father's trip and what stood out the most to you?
Good evening, Tracy. One of the main highlights of the trip was the Holy Mass celebrated in Bahrain's National Stadium with 30,000 pilgrims on the 3rd day of the trip. And some of the pilgrims had traveled from the neighboring countries, such as Kuwait, Qatar, and Saudi Arabia. And the majority of the Catholics in the region are migrant workers from other parts of Asia. One man, originally from Pakistan, told me that moving to Bahrain was worth it for the opportunity to meet the Pope. The Holy Father told those gathered in the stadium that what Jesus asked us to do does not primarily concern the great problems of humanity, but the concrete situations of our daily lives, our relationships in the family and in the Christian community, in the workplace and in the society. Another highlight was the gathering with young people at the Sacred Heart School. The group was made up of Muslims and Christians, but they all were excited to meet the Pope and hear his message. A young Muslim student from Saudi Arabia told me that he sees Pope Francis as universal peacemaker between all religions. And another student told me how proud she is to be a Catholic and expressed her excitement for the Pope's message. And Pope Francis told them that the Church supports young people and needs each one of them. He encouraged them to never lose the courage to dream big and to live life to the full.
And Alexey, we know the Holy Father also held a news conference on the flight back to Rome. What can you tell us about that?
Yes, the first question was about the results of the trip to Bahrain, and the Pope summarized it by saying that it was a journey of encounter with a new culture, with the Christian community, and with the other religions. But to enter into interreligious dialogue or ecumenical dialogue, the Pope stressed that you must have a strong identity and understanding of who you are and what you believe. And without this strong identity, dialogue is difficult. He said that the Grand Imam of Al-Azhar and Patriarch Bartholomew, with whom he met in Bahrain, have this strong identity. And he's pleased with the dialogue they could have together.
And overall, before I let you go, how did the trip go? And what were some of the themes that the Holy Father discussed?
Yes, the other themes were war and peace, the situation in Lebanon, and the role of women. The Holy Father spoke about the importance of female leadership. He said that when God created men and women, he did not create women to be man's pet dog. I quote, "Man is to take care of women as his own flesh, and all women's rights come from this equality." A society that is unable to put women in her rightful place impoverishes itself, he said. The Pope also lamented that in one century there have been 3 world wars. He mentioned conflict zones like Syria, Yemen, Ethiopia, Myanmar, and Ukraine. Pope Francis blamed the arms trade and the arms merchants for the current situation of war. In responding on the questions of how to revive Christianity in Germany, by the way, you know, the German bishops are coming to Rome for an ad limina visit next week. The Holy Father said that he doesn't want a second Protestant church in Germany, but he wants a Catholic church that is in brotherhood with the Protestants. He said that if there is no encounter with Jesus Christ, there will be ethics instead of Christianity. And he wished the German church to draw the strength from the simple religiosity that they can find in their grandparents. And it is important to remember that our strength and our religiosity are in the roots, and it is not to go backwards if we draw source from the roots and from our grandparents.
Well, Alexey, thank you so much for that report today. We really appreciate it. Alexey Gotovskiy, EWTN Vatican Producer. Thank you again. Well, just hours from now, Americans will cast ballots if they haven't already for the midterm elections. President Joe Biden looks to attend a rally in Maryland, while his predecessor, former President Donald Trump, is holding his own event in Ohio. White House correspondent Owen Jensen reports. Owen.
Hi, Tracy. Good evening to you. Tonight, both the current president and former presidents are going all out to get people to turn out at the polls tomorrow. Now, on this election eve, inflation, the economy, crime, education, and abortion all factoring in to people's final decisions.
While American voters are anxious about where the country is heading, especially on inflation, on Twitter this morning, President Joe Biden says, "I'll do what it takes to bring inflation down." Whether Americans are convinced he can, the president is about to find out. He's using social media in the push to get people to polling places.
A quick reminder, vote.
While in Miami, Florida, former President Donald Trump also urges voters to send back
Marco Rubio to the United States Senate. And you're going to re-elect Ron DeSantis as your governor of your state.
And in Ashburn, Virginia, the First Lady stumps for Democratic Representative Jennifer Wexton.
This election is going to be won or lost by where voting falls on your to-do list.
Vice President Kamala Harris, meanwhile, directs her message at students trying to push the administration's pro-abortion agenda.
There is a movement that was started by folks generations before us that led to Roe v. Wade about half a century ago. It is now incumbent on us to pick up that movement.
But Americans United for Life warns the current Biden administration is pushing abortion on demand. And Students for Life adds pro-women means protecting women's rights in the womb. And in the White House press briefing room today, we asked about former President Trump's recent accusation that, quote, the radical Democrats are locking up pro-life activists.
Clearly that's not true. I'm not going to say more than that. It's just not true. It's false. It's a lie. It's not true. So I'm going to move on.
Also tonight, President Joe Biden believes that democracy is on the ballot. In addition, more than 41 million Americans have already cast their votes. And in about 24 hours from now, the White House should have a much clearer view on which direction Americans want the country to go moving forward. At the White House, Owen Jensen, EWTN News Nightly.
Well, the results of tomorrow's election will determine which party is in charge of the new Congress come January. Capitol Hill could see some significant changes on the horizon. Democrats and Republicans each say their side has the better plans for America's future. Capitol Hill correspondent Eric Rosales joins us now with the latest. Eric.
Well, how you doing there, Tracy? Yeah, it is hard to believe after all those months of political ads. Tomorrow is the big day when voters will head to the polls to decide who will represent them up here on Capitol Hill. You know, most political pollsters have Republicans winning the House by double digits, while on the Senate side, if Republicans do win, most political pollsters say it's only going to be about by 1 or 3 seats. Either way, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi says don't count out Democrats just yet.
The Republicans have put in tons of money against our candidates and cut our lead in some cases, but they have not taken this These are races, in many cases, too close to call and the margin of error.
While House Speaker Nancy Pelosi is confident these races are winnable, House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy says Republicans are going to win seats long held by Democrats.
I see more competitive races than I've seen at any given time. I see Democrats spending money in seats that Biden won by 20 points. New York. And why is it competitive? Cost of living, crime, the inflation, the lost learning through COVID.
The GOP holds a big cash advantage over Democrats. Leader McCarthy has reportedly raised more than $150 million this election cycle. Plus, the Republican Congressional Leadership Fund and other groups raked in some $342 million. Senate Republicans continue to concentrate on inflation and crime, tweeting, "Crime is rampant, the border is open, our national security is weak." Joe Biden and Senate Democrats did this. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer tweeted back, "Democrats are working to protect and improve Social Security and Medicare and lower costs of prescription drugs. MAGA Republicans are working to put Social Security and Medicare on the chopping block." And by the way, the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops has come up with a voter guide for Catholics if you still remain undecided on some issues. It talks about everything from sanctity of life to marriage equality to immigration and the sanctity of marriage. Tracy?
Well, Eric, I'm curious, what are some of the key races to look for tomorrow, especially when it comes to the U.S. Senate?
Yeah, there are a number of races in the Senate, everything from Arizona to the Pennsylvania race to, of course, the Nevada race is very important. So we're going to be watching those races very closely. Over on the House side, Republicans believe that they can pick up a number of seats in the northwest part of the country.
All right. Thank you so much, Eric. Appreciate that. And if you follow the money, you could be headed straight for the state of Michigan. That is where pro-abortion groups have forked over millions of out-of-state dollars, all in advance of the vote on Michigan's Proposal 3, an effort to enshrine abortion rights in the Michigan Constitution. Among the donors, Planned Parenthood spending over $3 million, and a George Soros-backed nonprofit with a gift of nearly $5 million. And the list does not end there. Joining us tonight with more is Christen Pollo, spokeswoman for Citizens to Support Michigan Women and Children. Christen, great to be with you today, and thank you so much for coming on. As you know, abortion is on the ballot in 5 states. However, abortion rights groups across the country have now forked over more than $20 million to your state's Proposal 3. Why do you think that is, and why the focus on Michigan?
Well, in fact, there have been more than $34 million in donations brought here to Michigan, largely from New York City and Los Angeles. Make no mistake, this is a proposal backed by Planned Parenthood and the ACLU that they intend to use as a blueprint. If they can pass it here, they want to bring it to many more states in future elections, which is why so much money is being funneled into Michigan to pass this radical abortion amendment here.
And Christen, I know you say this proposal isn't just about abortion access, and voters, especially parents, should be really concerned about Proposal 3. Talk to us more about that.
That's right. Proposal 3 goes beyond just restoring Roe v. Wade, as proponents of Proposal 3 claim. It does much more. In fact, it repeals Michigan's parental consent laws for minors seeking abortions and gender hormone therapies, permanently repealing our parental consent laws. So this isn't just a concern for people who are pro-life. People on both sides of the abortion issue are coming together to say, no, Proposal 3 is too extreme for our state because it touches on so many other issues that are of importance to everyone, especially parents.
You know, I want to go back to that. I mean, you mentioned that this could kind of roll back parental consent. Is that possible? I mean, how is that possible, I should say, and is this even legal?
Well, right now, it would be illegal for a minor to have an abortion or gender hormone therapies without their parental consent. But Proposal 3 repeals those parental consent laws. Planned Parenthood and the ACLU are the backers of this amendment. They've admitted that this is what it would do and are now trying to sweep that reality under the rug. But they have admitted this to the press. They've tried to do this with similar legislation in the legislature in 2019 and 2021. And we shouldn't be surprised. Planned Parenthood is working across the country to repeal parental consent laws. They're now the second largest provider of gender hormone therapies, and it shouldn't surprise anyone that this is what they're trying to do here in Michigan.
Christen, we're almost out of time, but I'm curious, what are the polls saying, and also what is your gut saying as to Proposal 3's prospects?
Well, we're optimistic as we see our message resonating with voters. Proposal 3 is confusing and extreme. It would bring all sorts of extreme policies to our state that voters on both sides of the abortion issue are overwhelmingly opposed to. But of course, there's a risk in every election. And so we're encouraging everyone to please pour out with prayers and fasting for Michigan, especially knowing that this may be a blueprint that is brought to other states. So I'd encourage everyone to go to supportmiwomenandchildren.org to learn more and help us fight this radical abortion funding that's coming from New York and California.
Well, Christen, thank you so much for coming on and speaking to us about this. We really appreciate it. We have a lot more still to come here on EWTN News Nightly, including more analysis of tomorrow's midterm elections and the new measure in Florida regarding gender dysphoria treatments for children. Thanks for staying with us. Florida has become the first state in the U.S. to restrict gender-affirming care for children. In a new rule passed last Friday, the state's medical board will now bar minors from receiving puberty blockers, hormone therapy, or surgeries as treatments for gender dysphoria. Joining us now in studio to discuss is Jessica Anderson, Executive Director at Heritage Action. Jessica, great to be with you.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. A lot to talk about. But first off, your reaction to what's happening in Florida.
Well, I'm so encouraged by what the Florida Board of Medicine did just this last Friday with this new proposed rule. It really will protect kids and actually put their safety and their humanity first. And now we're in this 21-day period where the public in Florida can actually drop their comments in and respond to the rule before it's officially made into law. So it's really encouraging, and I think a great step for the Board of Medicine that actually lets science lead when it comes to protecting our kids.
How do you think this will play out across the U.S.? I mean, do you think other states will possibly follow suit?
I do, and I think many states are grappling with this issue after they've heard hours upon hours of testimony, of expert witness, of the science, of studies, and this is a new field. But so many state lawmakers are grappling with how to protect kids and how to tackle this desire that the left has to put puberty blockers in kids across the country. And so my hope is that other states are going to see the example that the Board of Medicine in Florida did, that they took the science serious, that they did their research, they did their homework, and they're able to issue similar rules in their states to protect kids.
I want to move along to the other big story this week, as you know, the midterms. And by many reports, conservatives are really surging right now. I want to get your take on that. And what do you think is behind the surge?
Well, right now what we're seeing is an incredible response from the American electorate that they are tired of the way Washington has been working. They're rejecting the Biden administration's leadership. They see the failures when it comes to our kids in schools, our economy, the border is wide open, crime is surging. And so the influx that we're seeing of so many voters, independent voters, swing voters, coming home to the GOP in these final hours before the election is going to mean a big night for Republicans tomorrow. And we're expecting a big wave, not just in the House, but also in the Senate.
Yeah, and a lot of eyes are on many states, as you know, one in particular, Georgia. And also we're talking about in Georgia, this early voting. There's been a lot of massive influx of that, even though there have been reports about voter suppression.
Yeah, it's actually been a wild 18 months because when Georgia passed SB 202 this time last year, there were cries from the left of voter suppression. Well, fast forward to this election and early voting, and the records are through the roof, where you've had the most midterm early voting that the state has ever seen. And so, it's just nice to see that conservatives won the day. They won the argument. This was about election integrity. And now voters in a pivotal state like Georgia feel secure and confident when they show up to vote. So Georgia's one of the states to watch in the Senate. Nevada, Arizona, New Hampshire, all four huge pickup opportunities for the GOP tomorrow.
Overall, how do you think everything is going to shake out?
I'm expecting 25 to 32, maybe 33 seats in the House to swing from the blue to the red. And in the Senate, I think we're looking at a majority of upwards of 52 seats, which would include either Arizona or New Hampshire breaking for Republicans and being able to hold those pivotal seats of North Carolina, Ohio, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin.
We have about a minute left or so, but what else is on your radar?
There are so many races that are below the federal. I want everyone in America to pay close attention to those state races that are happening and that are going to determine so many of these critical issues that state governments tackle. Look at the Maine state legislature. What way does that flip? Nevada, which way does that flip? Important races in Florida, important state races in Georgia. So a lot going on underneath those top ticket races as well.
And we know you'll be watching. We all will too. Jessica, thank you so much for coming on. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Up next on EWTN News Nightly, a look at some stories from around the world. Another round of threats from North Korea, plus flower power, a free gift for some lucky people in Spain. We are back tonight with some of the stories making headlines around the world. We start in France, where a cardinal confesses to the abuse of a 14-year-old girl and turns himself over to authorities. Charges have been filed with the Attorney General. Cardinal Jean-Pierre Richard reached out to the victim with regret and has withdrawn his responsibilities. North Korea announces, quote, overwhelming military action against the United States and South Korea. Pyongyang says the threat comes amid the joint military maneuvers between the U.S. and South Korea. One North Korean general says, quote, the more persistent the enemy's moves are, the more mercilessly the North Korean military will counter. In what is being called a very dark day for journalists in Hong Kong, an award-winning writer has lost her conviction over making false statements. Bao Choi was charged with deceiving the government after investigating a violent attack against citizens in 2019. The ruling sparked outrage among local media professionals. They cite the city's shrinking press freedoms. Bao was fined several thousand Hong Kong dollars. And finally tonight, as the old saying goes, the best things in life are free, and for some lucky people in Spain, that included free flowers. Officials in San Sebastian, Spain gave out more than 30,000 flowers yesterday. The plants had adorned the city's parks and gardens during the summer. The giveaway was to give the flowers, quote, a second life with some of the lucky citizens. And we thank you for watching tonight. Remember, you can follow us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at EWTN News Nightly. For the entire EWTN News Nightly team, I'm Tracy Sable. Good night and God bless.